Good afternoon. We're going to start our presentation. Students, parents, faculty, administration, thank you all for joining us today. Mrs. DeFury here with first what will be a series of night talks focusing on careers of our SJR alum. Today, I welcome proud alum TJ Caleca, who remains a very supportive member of our SJR community. TJ is the president and founder of ProudLiving, which you will learn more about. More importantly, PJ continues to demonstrate the true values of the Vir Fidelis. I encourage everyone to ask questions during the presentation. So welcome, TJ, and thank you so much for taking the time out to address our community.
Sure. It's my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for the intro. So I guess we'll start with why I came to St. Joe's. I grew up in Mahwah, and I played football. And I was really looking for a high school education with Christian and Catholic roots, and also a little bit more structure than me and my family felt like I would have found at a public school at the time. So I went to Bosco, I went to Bergen. And I had friends that went to all, 3 schools, and, St. Joe's was, really just a great fit for me. Smaller classes, much more intimate. And, thankfully I did go there because, it ended up being, probably one of the better choices that I've made in my life. So that's sort of how I got to St. Joe's. My favorite teacher, I had so many great teachers when I was at St. Joe's, some who stick out. Mr. Schust was an incredible teacher. Mr. Finn, who taught math, was really a great teacher, very methodical, connected with the students, really well. Mr. Mackey, who maybe some of you still may or may not know, very successful guy in life. And, I actually went to school with 2 of his kids, and he had come back to St. Joe's really as like a hobby. And he took it very seriously, a very disciplined guy, very sharp. And, it's actually sort of funny because like when I was at school, I would challenge him often. I was always a good kid, but, I loved to fool around. And, he really had a very short tolerance for, joking and playing games. And, he and I, really challenged each other when I was at the school. And, his dedication and commitment to, doing things the right way and, going the extra mile and, not letting, me get away with certain things, frankly, really made an impression on me that he really didn't have to do that. He could have just, let it be easy, but, he decided to, really do the right thing. And, when I needed to be disciplined, he disciplined me. And, I think when you're young, we look at that as, young people as, being like a pain in the ass, basically. But, as you get older, you realize that the amount of effort and, really the amount of care that, goes into that sort of behavior as an adult, we can learn to appreciate that as we get older. Best memory, I've got so many memories at St. Joe's, honestly. I mean, so many great people, so many great teachers, great coaches, great friends. Most influential person, I would probably say Coach Karsich, who's no longer at the school, but Coach was and is a very dynamic guy. And, he's sort of one of those people where like, you either love him or you hate him. And, a lot of times you sort of love him and hate him at the same time. So he's probably was the most influential person, on me when I was younger. And, he and I have actually become very close now, which is great. Extracurricular activities, football, winter track, spring track. I was actually in a play 1 year when I was a sophomore. What I learned, honestly, one of the biggest things that I really learned at St. Joe's, looking back on my experience, I don't I don't know that I knew this as it was happening, but, I think what I really learned from my experience at St. Joe's is, really a very clear set of, fundamental values and core values. And listen, would I have learned that, if I would have went to Mawa or Ramsey or Bosco? You know what? Maybe, maybe not, but I didn't go to those schools, and, I did go to St. Joe's. So, what I've learned, certainly has to do a lot with, my experience, and, St. Joe's is a huge part of that. Those core values and those fundamental values. I mean, stuff that I learned in football, and, whether you play sports or not, right? But doing things the right way, the way you start a play, the way you finish a play, picking up a teammate when they're down, running an extra, 5 hills because 2 guys didn't finish, and you sort of win as a team and you lose as a team. Things that I learned in the classroom, frankly, just beyond the books, really more the interpersonal experience, that I had with some of my teachers, that, not everybody's the same kid. Some kids got to, get grabbed by their neck, and, figuratively, obviously, and, other kids need to have your arm put around them. And, I think the amount of effort and awareness that, really was exemplified by the people that were at the school when I was there, that really taught me a lot about life. And, frankly, if I would have went to a different school, I don't know that I would have graduated, honestly. I mean, I didn't love, studying. I didn't love, taking tests, and, but I loved being at St. Joe's. And, I think the amount of enthusiasm that I had, when I went there, the amount of enthusiasm that, really was, it was, brought out of me by the people that were there, that really got me through school, and that really got me to graduate, and, really has played a huge part in, like, the fundamentals and the foundation that, really I live my life now. So I don't know if there's a slide or not, but I'm looking at slides here that Steve had sent me. So why real estate? Okay, so a little bit of background. I own a company called ProudLiving. ProudLiving is a real estate development, vertically integrated company. Basically, I've got at this point like 60 or 70 full-time people. We do all the property management in-house, all the rentals, all the leasing, accounting department, work orders, toilets break, tenants are unhappy, all the customer service. I mean, every single ounce of, stuff that, you could imagine to be involved in any business, we do all of it under the ProudLiving company. Why real estate? That's a great question. So when I graduated St. Joe's, I had gone to Monmouth to play football, and, I was there for like 4 or 5 weeks, and I had a personal issue, and I had a death in the family. So I came home, and honestly, my head, wasn't in it. And I remember having a very, serious conversation with my mom, and she had said, listen, if you're not going to be serious about college, I'm not going to pay for it. You have to pay for it, because I don't think you're going to take it seriously. And she really made it very simple, because I had no money. So I said, all right, well, I don't have any money, so I'm not going to pay either, and I'm not going to go. And, we can sort of get back to that piece later. So I was always into fitness and eating well and, playing sports. So really what I did first is I started a personal training business called Caleca's Training Factory, and cut a deal with my mother. I said, listen, if I pay you rent, I want to basically put all this gym equipment that I can find in the garage, and I want to, basically like start a gym out of our garage. So she was cool with that. That was better than, me doing probably a lot of other things. So I started doing that like when I was like 19, and I came back to St. Joe's. I got clients, from a lot of different places. And that business, frankly, did very well. I think like by the time that I was, 20, I probably had, I don't know, 25 or 30 clients paying me like $400 or $500 a month. So at a very young age, I was able to find some financial success, which sounds great. And, it's got a lot of upside to it. But the fact that I was really so young and so inexperienced and frankly, didn't have a damn clue about like anything in life, the fact that I was able to not go to college, start a business that took me like, $1,000 to start out of my mom's, garage, like everything was very convenient. And then all of a sudden I started to make like really, really, really good money. Here's the bad part, right? That money sort of like reinforced my arrogance, right? So like that money actually made me feel like, well, I must know what I'm doing because I'm making really good money. And the reality of it was like, I had no idea what I was doing. So I had no idea how to like balance a checkbook. I had no idea how to pay bills. I had no idea how to do anything, but I had a good amount of money coming in, which, actually, got me into some more trouble, which we'll, get into next. And I was making a good enough living at the time, and my schedule was flexible enough at the time where I was getting a little bored, frankly, so I would train somebody from like 5 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I had nothing to do until like all my high school kids got out of school. So I had like a huge window during the day where I had nothing to do. So, I wanted to buy a 2-family house and get into real estate, and sounded great. You make money while you sleep, all this stuff, right? None of that's true. So it can be true, but it's not true when you barely have enough money to buy a decent piece of property. So you've got to go to like a very difficult neighborhood. You've got to buy a very challenging asset that's got deferred maintenance and, all sorts of problems that, how the hell would I have known all that stuff, right? So I just went and I did it. So I sort of like got into real estate to be something that felt like a great hobby, right? I could do nothing. I could buy this piece of property. It's just going to throw money at me every month. That's not how it works, right? Like, especially like in the beginning. So I bought a couple of pieces. I bought one piece of property, and then I was like, figuring out how to buy more. And again, sort of reinforcing, unintentional arrogance that, I really felt like I knew everything. I felt like I had all the answers. How could I not have all the answers? I'm 19 or 20 years old. I own a personal training business that I make great money. I just bought a 2-family house. Like I must, know everything, right? Wrong, and that's, really what I learned sort of through this, these like 3 to 4 years was a huge, huge, huge amount of humility. And so sort of fast forward, like maybe 2 or 3 years later, I must have been like 21 or like 22. I was coaching at St. Joe's. I was coaching freshman football, and a family friend who I had met through St. Joe's, I had become very close with my buddy's dad. And basically he got me to like invest with him, and he stole all my money. He stole my father's life insurance money from when my dad passed away. He stole every dollar that I had made from my gym. He stole money from my mom, and really that was one of the greatest lessons that I ever learned in my life. And like that put me in a huge hole probably for like, I don't know, I want to say like 7, 8, 9 years, right? So like I was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt at like 22 years old. And I went from having a brand new BMW and being in great shape, personal training people, thinking I don't got to listen to anybody because like I have all my shit figured out and I know everything, to being completely blindsided by somebody that I thought, I did trust, right? So I trusted somebody implicitly, And again, that's sort of like part of that arrogance. Like everybody that I spoke to about investing with him told me all the same stuff. You should run it by a lawyer. You should look into it further. You should, all these basic things that now at 33 years old, I do today. So it's like, I was too arrogant and too stupid, frankly, to follow very simple guidance at a young age, and that taught me one of my greatest lessons in life is like, you have to do your homework. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You're not just going to give somebody money and they like make you rich. It just doesn't work like that. And, when I was at St. Joe's and, earlier on in my life, listen, we all don't want to do things that we don't want to do, right? It's like, that's why it's called, I don't want to do it, because you don't want to do it. Like nobody likes doing stuff that they don't want to do. And, there's a huge level of risk in not doing things the right way. And, there's a huge level of risk in being arrogant and not having humility, because, ultimately it's like, now I'm 33 years old. I'm really in a position where, I don't need to take a lot of the same steps at times, but I'm 33 and now I take the advice that I should have taken when I was 19. So, that experience for me was life-changing and, eye-opening for me. Challenges I faced. I mean, where do we start? So I was buying property in the worst parts of Patterson, the worst parts of Newark. This is like 2008, 2009, right after the economy tanked. Like when I tell you that it was crazy down there, it was crazy. Like, I don't know if anybody that's watching has ever watched like The Wire, right? That's literally what it was like in like the parts of Newark that I was at. Crackheads, craziness, people getting shot, crazy. So it was a huge culture shock to me, being a white kid from basically Bergen County, that, even when I'm in certain bad neighborhoods growing up, you're in the car, you don't really realize that's life. Like that's someone's reality. Like somebody wakes up every morning and they don't get to leave, like at least I drive down there and then I drive home. So, that was a huge culture shock for me. And then certain challenges, came from that. So being young, sort of being arrogant enough to say, I'm going to go buy property in one of the worst neighborhoods in America and somehow like, I'm going to make it work, right? Like you need a little level of like self-delusion and arrogance to actually believe that. It sort of worked well for me because, if I didn't think that, then I never would have started. So then you get down there and you realize, okay, I just bought this property. The roof's falling down. It's totally vacant. There's no windows. Like, how the hell do I do this? So by sort of throwing myself, and I wouldn't like suggest this for everybody, right? Because like this approach doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for me, thank God. So because I threw myself really in so deep, the only way to get out was to make it work. I was robbed down there. I had properties that were vandalized. I had to like, pay people to let their pit bulls like stay in the property at night. I mean, just, really crazy experiences at the time when you don't really think of it, right? Because like you don't really have any other choice. But then you look back and you realize that there's a lot to be learned from that. I'm certainly much like infinitely smarter now than I was 10, 12 years ago. I like to think that I'm smarter now than I was 2 days ago. But those experiences, while they were sort of dangerous, they've had a huge impact, really on my path. Likes and dislikes. There's a lot of likes and a lot of dislikes, really in any business, whether you're an entrepreneur, or, you're sort of have to be an entrepreneur, but you're really, more of like a technician in anything that, anybody does, even if you don't own your own business, there's tons of likes and there's tons of dislikes. I think if you're going to really try to do something big or meaningful, you've sort of got to be willing to get punched in the face a bunch of times. And, that for me, I don't always like getting punched in the face, but there is a part of me that, really has always appreciated that, right? Like I appreciate getting knocked around by the process, because I know that if that doesn't happen to me, I'm going to be in the same spot that I was before I started. Like if you get thrown into war and you survive, think about how much more capable and how much more aware, how much more robust your awareness and your senses. And, so those sort of, really tough times really are more valuable than the good times. Like I played football. I'm sure a lot of, people on here play sports. You don't play sports, then you watch sports, right? You learn way more from your losses than you do from your wins. So I've had a lot of likes. I've had a lot of dislikes. The reality of it is I don't have any regrets, which I feel very, blessed to actually believe that when I say it. And
PJ?
I really, yeah.
PJ, we have a question that, if you don't mind,
Sure.
and we're gonna practice this. Mr. Rodioner, can you open it up for Mr. Donnelly so we can ask Scott Donnelly so we can ask directly the question?
Oh, talk about the business model now?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. All right, from Scott. So the question is, how do I assess a property and basically go through the entire process? So identifying a piece of real estate, it really at the end of the day comes down to math. So a piece of property, you can hear it's only worth what someone's willing to pay. Yes, in a lot of ways that's true, but identifying the value of a piece of property, in my opinion, yes, location matters. Yes, the condition of the property matters, et cetera, et cetera. But those things really all just impact a very basic level of math, right? So if you look at a property and just say it's $100,000, all right, and that property is going to bring in, $4,000 a month. Maybe if it's in a better location, it might be $170,000, but it'll bring in $9,000 a month. So there's really very basic levels of math that I don't think that we have enough time today for me to do that justice. I'm happy to do an underwriting, thing on here, but identifying the properties, the way that I will do it is I look for density. So because I'm in neighborhoods that are more challenging, some of the challenging pieces of those neighborhoods are you have to be more hands-on, you have to have more staff, you have to basically provide a higher level of customer service than is ordinarily than people are ordinarily accustomed to either getting or giving. So let's very simply, if in a great neighborhood you've only got to have 12 employees, right? And I'm in a more challenging, immature, gentrifying market where I need 70 employees. In order for me to get the most out of those employees, I can't have them running all over the country. So density is incredibly important. How close or not an asset is positioned to a train or public transportation, how closely that asset may be located to another one of my properties. So, I mean, Scott, I don't know if you want to chime in. It's going through the process actually really hasn't changed. I think it's gotten easier for me at this point just because I have to do less work once I own the property because I've got employees. So I don't know if that was, totally clear or not. Let me see. I think we have another question.
Another question from Nick.
Yeah. So with your knowledge now, if you could go back and complete. So This is a great question. This is a great question. With my knowledge now, would I go back and complete college at 19 if I could? You know, I would say no. And it really doesn't have anything to do with college. It really has to do with me. And it really has to do with what works for me. I happen to be somebody that, I need to learn by doing. And if I would have went to college, I never would have had my money stolen from me. I never, I got an education by not going to college. And for me personally, that was an infinitely greater amount of value that I ever could have gotten than if I would have went to school. So, and listen, and I think about it now, like I would love to, take like Penn State online and get my degree and drive out to Happy Valley and walk and get my diploma. Like that would be really cool for me. At 33, do I really need to dedicate the amount of time and energy that I would need to dedicate to that to do it well? It's not for everybody. I think about it often, and I may go back at some point, but I don't think that I would have changed anything in my path if I could have, because if you take one thing out or you replace something with another, ultimately now I'm changing my makeup, and maybe it would change for the better, but I don't think so, Nick. So that's a great question. Thank you. Another question from Mr. McNulty. Why is the company called ProudLiving? That's also a great question. So at St. Joe's, as it relates to St. Joe's football, right, the main word is pride. And, coming up at St. Joe's, playing under Tony Karsic, pride was everything. Like you did everything with pride. When you started a drill, you said the word. When you finished a drill, you said the word. And really, in a lot of ways, ProudLiving is very similar where, I want my company to instill a level of pride, within communities and within buildings and within families that may or may not have that. And, to me, it's like anybody can figure out a way to get money. Anybody can figure out a way to go spend that money on a piece of real estate. Not everybody can figure out a way to get money, buy a piece of real estate, and ultimately make a difference in people's lives, especially in areas that have not gotten that from landlords traditionally. So, for me, like that's a huge challenge. If I could buy a ton of real estate and I could be like a billionaire, but I couldn't impact anybody, like that would literally do nothing for me, and I wouldn't want to do it. Like I would rather have my real estate career be incredibly challenging and incredibly exhausting and potentially not fruitful financially. But if I was able to impact people in a way that mattered, that's like the end all, be all for me. So that's where the name ProudLiving comes from. Another good question: how has the coronavirus affected my company? Thankfully, collections. Okay, so collections are basically the amount of money that you're expecting to collect on a monthly basis versus the amount of money that you do collect. So very simply put, if you own 1,000 apartments and every apartment's rent is $1,000, your expected rent is $1 million a month. Collections might be $1 million. They might be 990,000. They might be 900,000. So collections for us have only really been like, I want to say 8 to 15% less than where they've been pre-coronavirus. So from an economic standpoint, we really are not getting hurt in that regard. And I think that really has a lot to do with, frankly, my people, right? So my employees, they do an incredible job at making sure that like the Proud Living way is, you know, jammed down people's throats, right? So like if you live in an apartment and, you know, you're not happy, like it's somebody's job to make you happy. And like if that person can't try to make you happy and try really hard, then like they don't have a job. So ultimately, at the end of the day, this business is no different than a lot of other businesses. How you make your customer feel will ultimately impact your company's success. So like I've owned buildings that have been in terrible shape and the apartments have been disgusting, right? So like when I buy a building, I don't buy them and snap my fingers and then they're beautiful, right? Like a lot of time and a lot of work goes into that process. But if we can make our residents feel good and we can convince them that how they feel matters to us, that matters more to them than like whether or not they have a brand new granite countertop or whether or not their heat is at 71 degrees or 77 degrees. So really the effort, you know, the effort that we put forward as a company, you know, I like to believe is sort of the X factor, you know, in times like this. Our apartments are also very reasonably priced. So like if you lived in one of my apartments in Hoboken, it would be $2,900. But because I'm in the Oranges or I'm in Newark or I'm in Irvington, you get the same exact apartment, but your rent might be $1,600 or $1,700 or $1,250. So the margin for error is so much greater. So we've not really been affected by COVID. Thank God. So we'll, you know, see how that happens. Next question. Do you think there's opportunity for young high school graduates? Could you work on a license while in college, or is the market too slow currently? John, do you mean like being a licensed real estate professional? Is that what you're asking?
I think that's what he's asking. I think he's asking if it's a good idea as a high school person to just get your license. Do you think there's job opportunities right now? Is it a real tough business?
No, I mean, I think every business is a tough business if it's not meant for you. And ultimately, you know, no matter what the landscape is, if it's the right thing for you to do and you're good at it, it doesn't really matter, you know? So, you know, I feel like young people and, you know, really parents too, like we all have to be more honest about what we like doing and what we don't like doing, you know? And if you want to be a licensed, you know, realist, so I'm not even licensed, you know, because I never broker deals between people. I always just raised money or made my own money and then bought my own stuff. And you don't need to be licensed to buy and sell on your own behalf. So I'm still not licensed, and I don't, you know, need to be at this point. This is really like anything else. You learn by doing, you know. You don't learn how to shoot a basketball by reading it in a book, right? You learn by getting your ass in the gym and picking up the ball and shooting it 1,000 times and missing every single time and then coming back the next day and just shooting again. Like, so this really is no different. I think, you know, young high school graduates working on licenses, you know, I think if kids have a smidge of an interest in something, they should pursue it until they decide that like they don't want to do it anymore. Trying stuff doesn't hurt. Even if you try and, you know, you do get hurt, right, in like the moment. Like I borrowed $700 from my dad and I got my real estate license and like now I don't want to do it. Yeah, like that's sort of like, you know, in the moment, you know, like agony, but you didn't lose anything. Like you have a real estate license and now you know that you never want to do that anymore. So like that's worth the $700. And, you know, do I think that the market's slow? Listen, if the real estate market is hot and people are buying and buying and buying, then, you know, there's going to be a lot of people to represent who are buying. If the real estate market is slow and the economy is tanked, then, you know, you can go basically knock on doors and convince people why they should sell. So I think it, you know, this business, every business is what you make it, right? Every job is what you make it. I think that if somebody has a genuine interest they should pursue it. It can't hurt. And I hope that was a decent answer, John. I know that was a little long-winded. Another question from Mikey: will you have opportunities for an internship? 100%. So we would have to figure it out. Whether you're like remote or you want to come down to the office. I'm certainly open to doing internships. Even if it's unrelated to real estate. Listen, maybe it's a social media internship, like promoting my stuff on Instagram. Maybe it's a 501c3 nonprofit internship, right? So I have a nonprofit. I have a partnership with the YMCA. So that's not real estate related, but maybe you want to work in like the charitable space, and you want to do stuff for the nonprofit. So if somebody, yeah, John. So all right, awesome, good. I'm glad I could help. So if anybody wants to do an internship and they think that I'm interesting, and they're like crazy enough to want to work with me, then, shoot me an email. Scott Donnelly will send out my email address. You guys can email me and we'll just figure something out. So that's not an issue. I don't know if there was anything else. Steve, let me just look at your thing here. About ProudLiving, the corporate philosophy. I mean, I think I touched on that a little bit, the business philosophy. I'll talk about the future of ProudLiving. So right now, my company, we own about 1,000 units. So, to put that into perspective, it's like 1,000 apartments basically. In the last 2 years, the business has really started to institutionalize. So I don't know how many people are like familiar with that phrase, but like your local pizzeria that is ran by the guy who owns it, that's not an institutional business. That is a mom and pop business. Can be very successful, but that is, the antithesis of institutional. Papa John's is institutional. Domino's is institutional. So institutional is really all about growth and about scale. So the real estate business scales about as well as any other business in the world. And what scale means is that the economies of scale, that when you get to a certain size, things become infinitely cheaper and infinitely easier to run. I'll give you a very, very simple example. Okay. In my business, you probably need 50 employees to manage and own 300 apartments the right way. You could do it with 7 people, but you're going to work like a dog and you're going to basically have a job. You're going to be plunging, so it's not a business. It's really just a glorified job. But if you want to run it like a business, say you need 50 employees for 300 apartments. Here's the beautiful part. You probably need 55 employees for 1,300 apartments. So trying to scale, trying to get to scale in a business that scales well is incredibly difficult without a lot of capital up front and a lot of guidance and a lot of time. So trying to sort of do all of those things while juggling them all at the same time is incredibly challenging. But once you've gotten there, it's incredibly, incredibly, incredibly beautiful. Because like, I basically spend a lot of time making sure I have nothing to do. Because if I have to do something that I don't want to do, that should be delegated to somebody else, that's a waste of my time, because I should ultimately be doing something more important. And if it's not making money, maybe it's being available to do this conversation so that I might be able to help 17 kids from St. Joe's. Like, that's more important than me plunging a toilet or fixing a boiler or renting an apartment. So the future of ProudLiving, like the last 3 to 5 years, the business has finally started to scale, which has been an incredible experience for me. Because like the first 7 years of my business, I did everything. I had a maintenance cell phone. I had a rental cell phone. I had a personal cell phone. I did all the work orders myself. I would pick up laborers on the side of the road. I was taking work order calls. I was, doing everything, collecting rents, and it got to a point where I was like, I'm going to die. Like I'm literally going to die of a heart attack. And I'm starting to hate this business, because this business isn't the business I want to own. This business is just a really hard job that nobody can possibly do. And I got lucky enough to have to be the guy to do it. So it's like, once I really came to that realization, I started to invest a lot of money. I started to hire a lot of really expensive key people, but we're finally at a point where we've scaled, which means like right now I'm buying 250 apartments. It's like not that hard, and I'm not saying that to sound like a jerk. It's just, that's what I hope the future of Proud Living is, where I can continue to be oversight and check in on my people from time to time. But when I stop worrying about the work orders, somebody else is still worrying about getting them done. Like, that's a business. And, the last 5 years, we've made incredible strides as a company. I've probably hired like 250 people. I've fired, 200 of them, right? Because hiring is a challenge like unto itself. So that's really been like the last 5 years, like the maturation process of Proud Living. And I believe that like the next 5 years, I think that we have an incredible, incredible opportunity to be well-positioned in a very opportunistic market. I'm seasoned at this point. I know every street in every neighborhood like the back of my hand. So the fact that we're local and we have local knowledge and a local presence, we have a tremendous, tremendous upper hand and a tremendous advantage in our neighborhoods over somebody who wants to basically come in from somewhere else. So I'll give you another very simple example, right? Say, you're playing manhunt in your backyard and you've got a kid that, he's your cousin from California. He's never been to your house. He comes to your house, it's 10 o'clock at night, it's pitch black. Who do you think is going to win manhunt in your backyard, like you or him, right? Because you know the lay of the land. You have an incredible, incredible advantage over that other person. Our having density in our local market is the same exact thing, except you're talking millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of property, lifelong assets. So it's really been an incredible process. And I really see that only getting better, right? And that's the beauty of scale. Scale is like an enormous avalanche that starts off as like a crumb, right? When it's a crumb, it's this little thing that nobody sees, nobody gives a shit about, no one cares. But by the time it gets down to the middle of that mountain, it is an immovable, it is an unstoppable object. And everybody who's in its way needs to run. And really that's scale at its best. I mean, look at Amazon, look at Microsoft, look at Google, Tesla, these huge companies are behemoths, Facebook, other real estate companies. So it's getting to that point of scale is incredibly beneficial. And we are finally, over that hump. So I really see like the next 5 years, we are going to get into some ground up development. If it makes sense, we're going to continue to purchase things as it makes sense. We're going to really ramp up, all of our philanthropic and charitable stuff with the YMCA and our backpack giveaways or our coat drives. We're going to continue to do the things that we've done, but now we're going to do them to a larger degree with a much stronger foundation than, frankly, I've had to do it in the past by myself. I don't know. Yeah,
DJ, question for you. How
Sure.
does affordable housing fit into your picture? You have responsibility for that in terms of, the town's regulations.
Yeah. So conceptually, there is an affordability requirement conceptually, but that ranges from town to town. I'm going to give you sort of a technical answer, and I'm sorry, but I have to. So in your Ridgewoods, your Mawas, your, Morristowns, your general middle upper class neighborhoods, what they have done in the past is let's say somebody wants to build a 20-unit building in Ridgewood, okay, on the train. Ridgewood is probably required to mandate that, I don't know, I'm going to say 2 to 6 of those units be affordable or low-income housing. That dramatically decreases the value of that project. So in the past, what a lot of developers have done is they have paid the towns that I'm in to basically take that responsibility away from them. So they've fulfilled their affordability obligation by paying another town to take it. So the towns that I'm in, you know, all the properties are affordable from a practical standpoint, but they want to go the other way, Arlene. So it's like they want fair market housing because they want to attract people from Jersey City and from Bayonne and Kearney and Harrison and the Bronx and Staten Island, where they don't necessarily want affordable housing because all they've ever had was affordable housing. So it's really like the same argument, just on like different sides of like the spectrum. And, you know, in my neck of the woods, they want all my stuff to be fair market, because when you're fair market, you basically you allow the customer to dictate what a given apartment is worth. So if East Orange, for example, thinks that my apartments are worth $900, but I have tenants that are coming from Brooklyn that think they're worth $1,400, just think about what that does, like socioeconomically. A $1,400 rent, it's $500 a month more, which means it's $6,000 a year, basically after taxes. So if somebody makes $60,000 a year, that's basically 10% of their gross pay, right? So it's a huge amount of money. It's a huge amount of money that can now get recirculated into that, you know, given community, where now you're going to start popping up other amenities, pizzerias, gyms, you know. So it's like my towns want the rent to be higher because they want to bring in that demographic to then gentrify the areas. So it's the same argument, just the other piece of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Any more questions for TJ? Okay, going once. TJ, I can't thank you enough for your time today. It's a wonderful presentation. I appreciate it.
Sure. No.
God bless. Good luck with your business, and we'll see you around the campus.
Awesome. Awesome. And listen, if anybody wants to reach out to me, Scott, you're welcome to give everybody my email address.
Absolutely. Those are real entrepreneurs that are reaching out to you. Very good. I love it. All right.
Very good. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Be well. Bye-bye.